Okay, we are live.
All right. Call this hearing of the Archaeological Review Committee of July 21st, 2022 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Eck,
Present.
Member Pierce,
Present.
Member Wands,
Present.
Member Zinn.
Here.
Mr. Chair, quorum is present.
Thank you. Next item is approval of agenda. Anything to change on the agenda, Carly?
No chair.
Committee members.
Got nothing, Mr. Chair.
Nope.
Move for approval as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. We need the roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next item is approval of minutes for July 7th, 2022. Committee, anybody have anything to offer? Say members in.
I do not.
Thank you. Member Pierce.
Just scrolling. No comments.
All right. Member Wands.
I don't have any.
Thank you. Me either. So a motion.
Move
Mr.
for
Chair.
approval. Go ahead.
Oh, I move that we approve the minutes of July 7th, 2022,
Second.
as submitted.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next is matters from the floor. If anyone in attendance wishes to raise an issue from the floor, you'll need to raise your digital hand or otherwise attract the attention of Ms. Picarello for recognition.
I see no hands, Chair.
All right, hearing no matters from the floor, we will move on to old business. I believe we have none.
Correct.
Then we'll move on to new business. Case number 2022-5440. Nicole Thomas, agent for the city of Santa Fe, requests updated clearance for parcels in the Tierra Contenta development in the suburban archaeological review district. We have a brief staff report. Thank you. Is there anything we need to add to that?
Chair, just that the way this came about was we had some clearances and different documents that were that I had asked Nicole, who we have on contract at the city, to tease out because they were rather a little confusing in our documentation. So where they applied, and so this started us on a path to getting to this point. So we're glad to bring it forward now.
All right. Is Ms. Thomas in attendance and wishes to offer testimony?
Moving her over to panelists now.
Hello, Chair Eck and ARC. So as Carly mentioned,
Nicole, I'm going to go swear you in, please. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Nicole A. Ramirez Thomas, and my address is 447 PO Box 4470, State Line, Nevada, 89449.
Thank you.
So I was on contract with the city, and then for several months wasn't, and this project lay fallow for a little bit. I think it was in February that we started kind of having this conversation that the clearance that was being used for Tierra Contenta was really only for phase 1 and 2, and that phase 3, which was just approved by Planning Commission in October, hadn't been contemplated at the time that approval was provided. So much to the chagrin of individuals trying to move forward with development in this area, they've had to they had to wait some time to kind of get clear on this. And it was pretty interesting to go through the history of this 37-year in the making project. A lot of changes, a lot of staff changes. The ordinance wasn't even in play at the time that Tierra Contenta was coming into its development. So a lot of things to kind of track. The major issues, which I hope were clearly outlined, and I know that there's a few typos in here, like I noticed that I was mixing up BCD and BDC, but it is BCD. And Matt Schmader's name is misspelled a couple times, so I apologize for that. But I hope that it's clear that, you know, the question is, what has been brought into question is, whose authority was this to review? It's a city project and a Section 106 project. At points, the city has been an owner of the project. The city convenes a board that has authority over the project and any development that occurs there. So there's still some things maybe that need to be sorted out in terms of ownership. And we've asked that question, but haven't gotten a response yet. But I think that to me, the authority of the ARC to review this and make decisions on Tierra Contenta is clear. So I outlined that in one section. And then I tried to just tease out what had been mitigated in various ways over the course of the project. And I think there's a clear pattern that shows that phase 1 and 2 were cleared, but that anything that is what is now phase 3 wasn't addressed. There's some issues there too, like projection data is different now. So, and then I have no idea, there's been so much development out in Tierra Contenta, what's been moved where. And I do think that 2 sites have been probably developed over, and I kind of named those a little bit. So that's my discussion for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Committee members, members in?
Well, as Nicole said, the history of this is fascinating. I think I went onto the H board in 1987, and so all these names pop up, and it's just amazing. You know, worked with them, worked beside them, worked over there at HPD with them. It's pretty amazing. So I do have a question though. So when you say it was under 106, and does CPRC doesn't want any piece of this now? Do they? Or,
Well, members in, that's a good question. So I've made a suggestion in the recommendations that the city, because the city at times has taken ownership of this, and they really, like, the Section 106 process, I don't think has been addressed since 1988, or maybe the early 90s. Yeah, so I think that the state needs to be engaged to determine what needs to happen. But what I suggested to Carly and what I suggested in this report is that the city really kind of come together about what they think needs to be done, because it's been so much under the authority of the city, and then talk to NMHPD to see how we go forward with kind of managing the Section 106 requirements that have never been addressed.
Is there going to be any phase 4? We're going to keep calling everything south of Santa Fe Tierra Contenta. Keep going.
No, I think that there's. Can I share screen, Carly?
Yes, you can now.
Okay. Okay, so this map of Tierra Contenta, kind of shows, I mean, the phases, so, and this might occur in the planning commission records, which I did not dive into because there was plenty to look at. They're grossly defined. You know, this seems to be phase 1 here, and this seems to be phase 2 here. And then Daniel Werwath, who was the interim executive director for the Santa Fe Community Housing Trust, defined what these phase 3 areas were. And these are what they are. And the rest of this, I think, is open space. These green spaces. One of the sites that I think has kind of got lost is, I think, here in Swan Park, or it was in Swan Park. So I think that that's one. The one, I think that this right now is the area that individuals are desiring to develop right now. And there's one site that looks like it's plotted over here, probably because of the projection data, and is actually probably right in here. That would be of concern for this phase, but anything that's south of here is not actually part of this Tierra Contenta master plan. So
My only other concern about this is that so-called open space in that bottom right corner. I mean, the opportune time to do some, some least preliminary investigation archaeologically should be now as opposed to when the pressure is on to develop. So I don't know if you've got any leverage with anybody at this point, but that would be a suggestion.
okay.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Zinn. Member Ones?
I think I have some questions, but in your recommendations on page 20, your first recommendation is kind of cut off.
Oh, let's see.
Under number 7, administrative needs.
Like it got cut off on the page, or?
Well, it says possibly this clearance form should reflect. And then it,
Oh, and then I didn't finish the sentence.
yeah.
Which paragraph is it in? Can you tell?
So where you have the bullet points, the first bullet point.
Mhm. Oh, okay, possibly this clearance form should reflect, and the finish to that sentence would have been that the sites that have been cleared, like name, we have these 15 sites, and then maybe the clearance form should say, LA, and then the numbers of the 7 sites that have been cleared. But I don't know. I was just giving suggestions for how to create some clarity around this, because I mean,
That's pretty confusing.
so I didn't know, like, I'm not even sure that creating 2 different clearance forms by phase is particularly useful, since we don't have clear boundaries for what's phase 1 and phase 2.
Right.
And I mean, the way that the project was set up in phases, it was intended to be entitled by phase. So it makes sense that 3 wasn't dealt with, and that phase 1 and 2 are pretty much built out at this point.
Right.
There might be a little, so I will leave how that clearance permit should be clarified up to you all. But that would be the end to that sentence.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Mhm.
That
Is
was it.
that all, Member Ones?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Member Pierce?
Okay, you'll have to bear with me here because I highlighted like the whole document.
Okay.
I'm going to go through them one at a time and see what were questions and what were just like my attention. Okay. Okay, here's my first question.
Okay.
I know that you say on page 6 that this project was started before there was an archaeological ordinance, right?
Correct.
But then my real point, if I can find it. Somewhere in the report, and I'll find it here in a moment, it says that the city purchased this parcel between 1988 and 1994. Do I have that correct?
Yes, and so, yes, the ownership changed. The Belima Community Development basically went bankrupt.
Mhm.
And-
Yeah, here it is. It's on page 14, the last paragraph.
Yeah, and so when that happened, and again, I didn't get into the planning commission records. The city decided to purchase Tierra Contenta,
Mhm.
development, the land and everything. So at that point, then the city was the owner of it.
Yeah, that really gets to the heart of it. If I understand the timeline right,
Mhm.
the city was the owner of this parcel when the ordinance was passed. Is that true?
So, well, I think that's an interesting point. The ordinance was passed in 1987.
Hmm.
And at that point, it was owned by the Belima Development, Belima Community Development. They were already in the process of entitlement because there had to be rezone and there had to be annexation into the city. And so that all started like 1985 and 1986. And in doing that, there was no archaeology ordinance, but there was planning commission. And so planning commission imposed compliance with these archaeological concerns. And at this point, nobody knew that section 106 was a requirement. And so in working to comply with the planning commission's desire, the initial survey was done by Hannaford, and then that was sent to SHPO for review because there's no archaeological review committee at this point. And they discovered, through their consultation process that HUD had provided money to Belima, and therefore it was a section 106 process. But there was always recognition that even though there was section 106, there was still this requirement to comply with the planning commission conditions. And so what they asked for, Belima asked for at one point, was that the city accept the section 106 requirements as compliance with the planning commission requirements.
Okay.
So
yeah, the reason I ask about the timing is I was having trouble understanding why provisions made for a private owner way back when have any bearing, given that the city acquired the property afterwards. But that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It raises a question, maybe this is for Carly or for the city attorney, but does the code provide any provision for doing archaeology when the city transfers land to a private entity? Most agencies do an inventory before they divest themselves of property. Does the city not do that?
So
Go ahead, Nicole.
okay, I was hoping to answer. So the private development did the inventory prior to the city acquiring it.
Okay, and they took that
Yeah.
as a previous survey. Okay.
Yeah,
Fair.
but then they didn't. So there was this kind of like program established to manage these sites, mitigate them, do different things with them. Some of them were going to be capped and others were going to be excavated. The city seemed to have gotten some CLG funds to help Belima and then themselves mitigate areas that were being developed, but it was always very messy.
Yeah. Well, you've done a very, very good job of trying to sort out that mess, but I still have questions, obviously. So,
Yeah.
Here, I do have one editorial thing. This is on your figure 6.
Okay.
The caption reads map showing the location of 5 eligible sites. I believe that should be 10. Looks like you copied the caption from the other figure.
Oh, okay.
there are definitely 10 sites on that figure, so.
Okay, we'll correct that.
Uh,
Let me just
Go ahead.
interrupt. Do you mean 8, not 10?
I believe it's 10. Let me,
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it should be 8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9.
9.
Yeah, I see 9 for certain.
8, 1, 2.
But somewhere in the text itself talks about 5 and 10, and I believe your intent here was to show 10.
Yeah, it is 10. I found
Yeah.
that there's a little one, 5, 4, 7, 5, 9, and then another little one, 5, 4, 7, 4, 4.
Okay.
So yeah, okay, I will correct that.
Right. Back to where I was here. Still scrolling through. So I have to beg your indulgence here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, here's another incomplete sentence. This is on page 14, the beginning of the second to last paragraph. It reads, back in 1986, another utility line for phase 1 of Tierra Contenta, period.
So let's see, in 1986, another, okay, so this, I'll fix that too, let me highlight it. Tierra Contenta was in the middle of kind of working with SHPO on their section 106 requirements and, you know, concurrence and what they had to do. SHPO says, you can put in this utility line, I believe it was a water main, but you have to make sure to avoid LA 54759, I believe it was. And then to, oh no, LA 54744 was to be avoided. And then there was supposed to be monitoring for LA 54759 to make sure it wasn't impacted. I think both sites were totally impacted by this utility line, but it's not clear. Like there's like, nobody really ever comes out and says that clearly. And so that's what that sentence was intended to start the
Okay.
paragraph with.
Thank you. So yeah, just reading a line below there, you mentioned LA 54759,
Mhm.
which I read as an intact historic home. Are you telling me that was impacted?
I don't know. So the last time I went out to Tierra Contenta, which was actually in March, I drove through there, and it was unrecognizable to me. It's so developed, like it looks so different out there. So that should be checked. That's probably one of the things should be checked.
It should, they all should be, but I'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, it's one thing to miss, you know, a lithic scanner, but a standing house, that it's kind of hard to miss something like that. All right. That's more about the bankruptcy. Oh, well, you already mentioned that you misspelled Matchmater's name a couple of times. I found 1 or 2 of those. Oh, okay. If could refer to page 15,
Mm-hmm.
and near the top there, you've got a bulleted list of 4 sites that were cleared.
Mm-hmm.
Cleared by whom? By the ARC, by HPD, by?
So
What did you mean by they had been cleared?
They'd been cleared through the ARC.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. And what can you tell me about this clearance permit in 2001, which some people are taking to mean the whole parcel was cleared?
Well, so looking at the minutes, they change over time, kind of depending on who the stenographer is. And Melissa, you do a wonderful job. I'll just say that. So sometimes you get like more of a synopsis of a conversation than, like really capturing what was intended. But it seems like Chair Cozen that he had said, this is clear, like we don't need to see anything more about phase 1 or phase 1B, or, because there are all these subphases. And again, I think that could be teased out but by going through the Planning Commission records and maybe some other permitting and development things, but they aren't part of the city HPD record, which is really what I was focused on. So for phase 1 and phase 2, which were the only 2 phases contemplated at this time, all phases were cleared. And I think that it was intended to capture these sub-phases, like phase 1, phase 1B, phase 1A, phase 2, all these different things. So all those phases were cleared. And then phase 3 wasn't being discussed, and it hadn't been entitled in any way, and it didn't receive any entitlement until October of 2021.
Okay, so when it says that all phases were cleared, it was at that time, it was only phase 1 and phase 2.
Yes.
3 had not materialized yet. Okay.
And then
Thank you,
yeah, I'm sorry. It says phase 1 and phase 2 in the line at the top, and then at the bottom it says all phases.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Let's see what else I've got here. That's all just for me. Yes. Oh, that is the incomplete sentence that Member Wands pointed out. So we've already seen that. Okay. So you've done a lot to clarify the sequence of events here, and to the extent that I can follow it, here's what I think. First of all, the ARC certainly does have jurisdiction over this case, at least phase 3. I think at a minimum, your suggestion that someone go out and relocate these sites and update the conditions of them is a good one. I think a better alternative would be brand new survey of phase 3. I mean, the survey is 40 years old now, and the location information is suspect. I think it would be better to start from scratch. That's just my 2 cents. And with that, I'll yield the floor. Maybe follow up later.
Thank you, Member Pierce. I'll start off with saying, I think you're 100% right. A 40-year-old survey should be just replaced with a modern survey, and then we'll know what's there, where it is, and there won't be a question about the use of a datum that's other than the normal for now. And I do think that would be the first step, which is your second recommended bullet point. Let's figure out what's there and what the condition is. And then the next one would be for us to decide if the sites are significant to the city. And then we could contemplate a clear and signed archaeological clearance permit for phases 1 and 2, because we'll know that everything outside of that has now been put under control. And at that point, what has been done and has been covered by previously approved mitigation should no longer be a factor. But I'd like to do it in that order, if possible. And then if necessary, we go on to the next 4 bullet points you got in the order that they are. It just seems to make logical sense approaching it in that way, especially if any of these things cross phase boundaries. And then and even more especially if any of them are the ones you've alluded to that may have been developed over or otherwise dinged by activities in the interim. A lot happens in 43 years. And then we'll have a fresh look at our situation, and we can just have a simple, here's a report, here's the recommendations, and go on with it like normal life for the ARC. And that's sort of my 2 cents. And with that, I think that's all I need to say right now. If there's any further discussion, now's the time.
The only question I would have, Mr. Chair, is what action are we to take?
My question, exactly.
Are we postponing this case? Are we, I'm not quite sure what action we've arrived at. I know what we want, but not how to say that here's the next step, you know?
Well, as I understand it from reading this document, the request is for there to be a clearance permit to clarify phases 1 and 2. And I guess I've indicated I'm not too excited about doing that until we actually know what's going on. So at that point, I think we either postpone to a date certain or accept the recommendations and decline to issue a clearance permit until such time as we have the information we need. That seems to be the only 2 options that present, unless city staff, city attorney, anybody can come up with something better.
May I ask just one point of clarification for city staff? The areas that you're suggesting be surveyed are what is now considered phase 3. And then the other sites that are in phase 1 and 2, any visit to those locations to take photos of the houses that are built there? Or like, I would like just to be comprehensive for the, you know, phase 1 and 2 clearance element of it. And yeah, there might be some overlap or bleeding over, and we don't know.
Personally, I wouldn't worry too much about things that have been developed over. I'm more concerned about sites that are supposed to have been avoided in some way or the other, just to verify that it happened and they're still there, and the city does indeed have its control over those situations and will continue to protect as agreed to in the original section 106 related document.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that would make sense to me as well. If any of the sites that were recorded in phase 1 or phase 2 are being preserved, or at least we hope they're being preserved, a good step would be making sure that they are where we think they are, right? If nothing else, verify their location and that they are still fenced or still part of green space or whatever step was taken to avoid them in the first place, that is still accurate.
So you could literally do nothing at all with all the sites deemed not significant, i.e. not eligible for section 106. You could deal only with the sites in phases 1 and 2 that are supposed to be preserved and protected as being significant and eligible. Verify what their condition is at this point, and survey all of phase 3. One report to summarize all of everything. And on the strength of that, we ought to be able to move toward the desired clearance permit with any conditions deemed necessary, and with the full intent of then consulting with the Historic Preservation Division to get the SHPO's buy-in on the presumed solution.
Thank you. So back to my original question. I would agree that the 2 options we have remaining to us are to postpone, but it can't really be to a date certain because they're not going to have this ready next meeting, or to just let it come to a vote and vote our consciences. And if it's declined, it's declined.
And
How do we feel about postponing to a future date not certain?
Chair, member Pierce, I've got the calendar up. I've got August 4th, September 1st, and October 6th that I'm looking out at. Maybe September 1st would be an option.
We can name a date, and then if it doesn't happen, we just have to name a new date.
Could Nicole also withdraw it? In the past, we've let people withdraw the report so that it doesn't come as a,
Or as a negative.
yeah.
It's not negative, it's just doing business. We're just
Well,
not
but we'd have to
getting out of the
decline it
woods.
in order to, we'd have to decline it in order to come back at another meeting.
Right,
Sure.
and if it's declined, then it's kind of like a mark against her.
Can I just chime in here?
Please.
So I'll just say as former staff, one, that a date certain is only necessary if you're going to have only a short period of time for publishing on an agenda. So if you did postpone, you could just say postpone and then it comes back whenever. My report is really intended to be administrative for the review. And so, I mean, I suppose it could be denied, but I'm not really making any request for approval for anything. I'm just looking to provide staff and the ARC with, you know, ideas on how to manage these ARC approvals that were being a little bit misused. So hopefully, you know, I mean, I think a postponement, I'm not really sure how to, I guess this is maybe more of an administrative matter than it would be a case for approval or denial.
Well,
but
it's informational for us.
yeah, but it was noticed as a case. And so, so I don't know how you want to like move forward with it. But one of the things going forward is that we need to find out who the owner of this property is.
Oh, yeah.
We're really,
Basic. Yeah.
that is one like really unclear element. and then have to like discuss with them, you know, because the city does still, they have the Tierra Contenta board that still has a hand in the development of this. And so I think that the responsibilities for who's going to take care of the survey and hire somebody to do it and all those things are really up in the air. So this could take, you know, some time to kind of sort out. And also, very certainly we're going to get pushback from people developing about
That was
this.
my point. The planning commission, as I understand it, has already approved phase 3. So everybody's jumping, and they did put no conditions for archaeological research, right?
Right.
But
And
now we're trying to pull a string that they don't think is even there. So they're not going to be happy.
yeah, and so that's something Carly and I just started a conversation about today, as you know, planning commission didn't condition it because they were provided information by planning staff that was just presented in error, basically. And so I don't think it negates the need to address these sites, but more it's a matter of like, does it need to go back to planning commission for a condition, or can just phases of development come to the ARC, like parcels as they're developed, come to the ARC for individual approval? But what you're suggesting is this more comprehensive survey of what's remaining for Tierra Contenta in order to just work on evaluating what needs to be done next. And so anyway, I think that the next step is one, to find the owner of this property, and then
notice about.
yeah, to figure out.
So guess what?
Well, if Carly and Frank are comfortable with just postponing indefinitely, I will certainly make that motion, but I'd like to clear it
Chair,
before I do so.
Member Pierce, I am definitely, I would prefer that just because the way we have it stated as a case. We also, the request within the case is for the updated clearance. So it's preferable keeping that administrative record cleaner in my point of view to go ahead and just postpone.
Okay. Then in that case, I move that we postpone consideration of case 5440.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
I believe we have public comment. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or not.
I'm sorry. Back to Zoom.
Right.
If there's anyone in attendance who wishes to make a comment on this case, please attract the attention of Ms. Picarello by raising your digital hand or otherwise attracting attention.
I believe I have one hand up here. So let me go ahead and give Ms. Gavioli permission to speak and unmute. Yeah.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
yes, I will go ahead and swear you in. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name is Lisa Gavioli. I'm with Jenkins Gavin. That is our address. It is.
Well, you drive to work every day.
I'm spacing it right now. 130 Grant Avenue, Suite 101, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87501.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the statement that phase 3 has been approved. It has not been approved for development. A master plan amendment was approved. And each development tract is required to have a subdivision plat. There's further actions that will be needed by the Planning Commission and further opportunities to introduce conditions as necessary. And there certainly was some confusion by the records, and there was no intention of getting away with something. It was the broad understanding that the clearance had already been issued, at least according to the information that was given to us, as we are the owner's representative for Tierra Contenta Corporation, both on the master plan amendment and the infrastructure design that's about to take place.
Thank you, Lisa. Nicely stated.
Now we know who to talk to.
It sounds like that at some point this is going to come to us as a normal old case on its own.
If
Right.
you make a determination that clearance has not been properly granted for phase 3, then yes, that is true.
Very good. Then I will amend my motion and move that the committee finds that clearance has not been previously granted for phase 3 and postpone consideration of this case until further details are provided. Does that work for everybody?
Sure, I'll second that.
Perfect. Moved and seconded. Now let's do the roll call vote.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We'll move with case number 20225561. Tierra Right-of-Way Services Limited, agent for Jenkins Gavin, requests approval of a survey and inventory of 50 Mount Carmel Road in the River and Trails and Suburban Archeological Review Districts. Thank you for your staff report, Carly. Anything to add or change?
No, Chair, not that I know of.
Thank you. Is Ms. Rude in attendance? I see the name has appeared. Okay, can you enable her to be seen, heard, and sworn in?
Asked to unmute, Tricia.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Trisha Rude, 1821 Chaparro Street, Las Cruces, New Mexico, 88001.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. What do we need to know besides what you've provided on paper?
Well, I do have one thing to add that came to my attention after submitting the report. And that is that Lisa Gavioli supplied me with the 1961 master plan drawings of the property. And on those drawings, it looks like feature 1 at site 200651 is probably not a demolished building. It looks like it's a tennis court. That drawing also shows a proposed location for some dormitories at that area. And I don't know if those were built, but that could explain some of the other construction demolition debris we were seeing and I was seeing in that area. That doesn't affect any of my recommendations, but that is some further information that came to light. I think everything else is in the report. So yeah, let me know what you guys think.
All right, thank you. Member 1. Courtney, you are muted.
Yes, I am. Sorry. I don't seem to have anything highlighted on the PDF, so I guess
All right.
I don't have
Fair
anything.
enough. If you spot something later, we can revisit.
Okay, thanks.
Member Pierce.
Okay, I'd like to start with the staff memo, actually. And the second sentence on the background and summary section says the property was evaluated in a separate report and by a separate party as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Can Carly or someone explain that to me? Because it doesn't really appear anywhere in the report.
Yes, Member Pierce, thank you. After, as mentioned in the report, there was an HCPI done on the buildings, and that was submitted separately because we, as a city, we accepted that on the HGRB side. So I had sent that. That is the separate report that was seen as eligible for National Register. And I believe it was only a couple buildings in that, but I can pull that up for clarity on my fingertips here. Does that answer your question, Member Pierce?
Well, it does, but it raises another one, which is that it's the National Register of Historic Places, not historic buildings. They've determined that the building is eligible, then almost by default, the parcel that goes with it is part of that eligible property. So the separation that we're trying to accomplish here may not be valid. But anyway, thank you. If it is the buildings that were evaluated separately, that's helpful. At least we know it's not the same sites. Okay, let me move on here. Okay, for Ms. Rude, on page 22, the first full sentence reads, the previously documented segments of the National Santa Fe Historic Trail fall just east of the project area. I believe somewhere above that you had said west.
Oh, yeah, it should be west.
Okay, so yeah, that would be a typo then on 22.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay, on page 27, it's the beginning, the last paragraph, just above the bullet points.
Okay.
The second sentence reads, it appears to represent a single episode of domestic trash dumping.
Yes.
And I think elsewhere, and I'll see if I can find it. Oh, okay, here it is. Unless I've confused two different sites, on page 29, beginning of the second to last paragraph, it says appears to represent a small dump site associated with several episodes of material dumping. So there seems to be a conflict between whether this is a one-off or repeated use of the same dump. If that's clear.
So artifact concentration 1 appears to be just a single dump episode. But then it looks like there are later episodes that may actually be fairly recent of like construction debris.
Gotcha. Thank you for that
What
clarification.
I was trying to say.
Okay, maybe you did, and I just had read it too fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Forgive me again. This one is all marked up, and I'm having trouble finding which ones are actual questions and which ones are just to draw my attention. Okay, regarding LA 200-651, you've recommended later on that the site is not eligible, that the information potential has been exhausted. I'm struggling with that a bit. And to provide an example, on page 32, the last line of the third paragraph reads, they could be the remains of a walkway or remnants of a small structure. The reason I'm struggling with it is if you don't know what the feature was, how is the information potential exhausted? Right, if it's still in either or status, that's not really exhausted.
In that we could still go to historic drawings. To kind
Yes, that there may be one or
Yeah.
more ways to determine the
Yeah.
actual
Okay.
nature of that feature.
At this point, I'm thinking since it's by the tennis court, that's actually probably just the old walkway.
Fair enough. It might be worthwhile to beef up that particular paragraph.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, 2 paragraphs later, discussing feature 9. You state that it could be an old swale relating to Santa Fe Trail was considered, but that's unlikely. Doesn't align with any of the historic trail segments on the city of GIS, the city of Santa Fe GIS map. I have 2 comments on that particular statement. One is that the fact that it's not on the city map does not preclude the possibility that it is still the Santa Fe Trail. If it is, it would be a new segment and would be irresponsible to record that. The other is, did you consider the possibility that it is not a trail, but an acequia?
Yes, and I think I mentioned in the report that I didn't see any indication of it being basically used for irrigation. I think it's just a roadside ditch that's kind of modified from it's basically the head of a natural drainage. Yeah.
Did you consult the work of David Snow and others to rule it out as an acequia?
No, I really just looked at the historic topo maps.
Okay.
So.
Rest, I think, are either minor editorial things or just for my own edification. I don't think I have anything else. Let me verify real quick. Oh, well, here's one. On page 35, the second paragraph, we're discussing feature 2. the 1, 2, 3, I believe it's the third sentence reads, feature 2 could have been the location of a demolished structure. That's pretty open-ended to then go on and say that the information is exhausted. It could have been a structure, but we don't know. That, to me, that's not exhausting the information potential.
Yeah, and I didn't see anything on that master plan from the 61 to indicate that there would be a building there. So yeah, I can maybe revise that.
Yeah, if you've got, you know,
Yeah,
aerial photos or other archival evidence that suggests that, hey, there was nothing here previous to the 75-year cutoff, it would be helpful to bring that into the
Okay.
report.
yeah.
Okay, again, on page 35, top of the page, 1, 2, the third line, possibly remnants of a water control feature or demolished structure. Again, you know, it would be nice to be able to say with a little more confidence one way or the other before we write this off as not eligible, not significant.
Sure.
A little farther down, there's feature 2 could have been, I think I just mentioned that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and let's see, on page 35, the last sentence of the first paragraph, a 12-ounce aluminum pull tab and a brown glass bottle base with a maker's mark and possibly 1967 date stamp are directly across the arroyo from feature 1 and likely related to the feature. That's a pretty weak argument for saying that we've defined the age of this feature. You know, we have a little bit of trash across the arroyo from it. That doesn't cut it for me. I mean, I'm not saying that it's definitely older than that, but some litter on top does not define the age of the feature.
Yeah, and I wish there was more clearly diagnostic artifacts in the feature. What I was looking at looked fairly recent, but that's just kind of based on kind of its condition and what it looks like. But yeah, I understand that's not, you know, strong argument for the age of the feature.
Yeah, the only other thing I have, and I guess this is just more of a statement than a question, talking about the NRH eligibility recommendations in general. This would be on page 36. Under the section on eligibility recommendations, the first line reads, the site area include the concentration of late 19th to early 20th century artifacts and 2 recent historic features. That late 19th to early 20th century probably overlaps the period of significance for this potentially eligible property that we're not talking about, that's part of somebody else's report. So if it is concurrent with that feature and that feature is eligible, then potentially the artifacts category that goes along with it is also part of that eligible property. But that is all I have at the moment. So I'm gonna yield the floor again and maybe follow up on other committee members' comments.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Members in?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Carly sending out the HCMI because that really is the story of this site. And the archaeology is probably falls out of that period of significance of these buildings, with the exception of possible stray trail ruts. But the real history, and this is one of the more important groupings of compounds of buildings that's not institutionally owned and were assembled. So it's an important site from that architecturally. And as you say, if it's important architecturally and it fits within the period of significance, then we need to consider the site maybe a little more carefully. This does resolve the question we had with the Bruns Hospital, and when they were sending patients up to this site for some of their rehabilitation. So it sounded like they were setting up the Archeological Museum, but they were actually sending them here, I think, because this was an adjunct to the Bruns. So yeah, Carly sent that out to us, I hope to everybody, but if you've got it, you should look at that. So that's my only question or comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dale. And thank you for asking for that documentation. That sure did fill in some background. My only additional comment regarding the text as offered is on page 30, second paragraph of the discussion of LA 200651, wherein it's stated that the feature location matches that of a building depicted in satellite imagery dating from between 91 and 96. And then it goes on to speak about it not showing up elsewhere. It would really help to include a figure that shows that aerial imagery so that we can see the precise location, context, dimension, etc. that you're mentioning.
And as I mentioned earlier, it looks like I was incorrect in thinking that was a building. It looks like it's just a tennis court. And the aerial that I was looking at, I mean, it's just a brown square. So it probably was just a tennis court. But yeah, I can include maybe a figure of from the master drawings or aerial photo or something.
Well, since you're specifically referring to the photo, I think we ought to see the photo. The master drawing, I'm not too concerned about what's presented there. I just think it's helpful if there's discussion of something that we get to see the something.
Sure.
And that's all. I don't have anything else to add. I think it's been pretty well stated by everyone else where we are.
Mr. Chair,
So,
I have one additional comment. I probably should have led with this. Your report indicates that all three of these sites are avoided, that basically this is a rehabilitation of the building and not, disturbance of the grounds. So it makes me wonder, and I'm not trying to take the easy way out here, but why is this case before the RC at all? There are no ground disturbing activities.
There's got to be.
So my understanding is this is kind of preliminary and that there may be some new construction. And they were wanting the entire parcel to be inventoried to, I guess, basically for planning purposes. And if Lisa is still on the meeting, she may have further comments.
She is, she has her hand up, so I'm gonna go to allow to speak. Go ahead and unmute. Oh, and before Chair, we have a hard cutoff of 5:45 today for Melissa, for a stenographer.
Thanks.
5:45. Okay, clock is running.
Okay, thank you. So what was the last question? I have a few things to clarify. But why is this case in front of the ARC? Because it's in the river and trails and it's greater than 6 acres and it's going to planning commission. Or we thought at the time that it was going to planning commission. It may or may not at this point. We're still waiting on the entitlement path from planning division staff. However, we you know, in good practice for due diligence, we thought we would go ahead and have the entire property surveyed. I can confirm that the feature one that Tricia was referring to, I'm not remembering the site number right now, is indeed a tennis court that was there and was demolished at some point historically. We are going through a National Register nomination process for the buildings on the property. And so there is extensive research on the property, you know, over and above the archaeological survey. So we do have evidence that there was a tennis court in that location when it was demolished. That may be some of the debris that you're seeing around. The debris downslope from the Santa Maria building may be associated with some of the construction activities that took place in 1962 when the chapel was built and the priest's residence and the dormitory. Because at that time, it's clear I've walked this site a million times at this point. It's clear that earth was pushed off towards the arroyo, and that's created a man-made slope along the arroyo. And so I think that that's some of the debris that you're seeing along that slope, is this debris from various periods all jumbled up together. So I'm not sure how much integrity that trash deposit actually has at this point.
Yeah, I would tend to agree just based on my observations that even that artifact concentration that had the older artifacts in it, it may be just pushed into that area.
And just so you know, the period of significance that's being discussed with the SHPO is actually not associated with the sanatorium occupation of the site. It's more associated with the master planning for the monastery, for the seminary. And that is because the SHPO really feels that there is not enough integrity really to read the sanatorium occupation there on the site. But yes, it's a very important part of the story of the place, but that it's not necessarily definitive of or representative of the period of significance for the property.
Thank you, Lisa.
Fair enough. Thank you. Mr. Chair, yeah, I guess what I'm struggling with is not, to be honest, the artifacts. Even if they are due date to the period of significance, it seems like their contribution would be negligible. My only concern is that none of the features date to that period of significance. I'm hearing that likely that none of them do. Is that everybody else's understanding from their reading of the packet?
I think that's true.
Number one, you're muted.
I know. I'm not sure.
Okay, at this point in time, we have some observations and requests for information presented by more than one member. Can we craft a motion to move this case? Because we are perilously close to having to postpone the next 2 cases for lack of time.
I'd move for postponement to date certain of the next meeting with the additional information to be provided at that time. Is that big enough?
I'll second that, I guess.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce?
Aye.
Member Wands?
Aye.
Member Zinn?
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We have just enough time to move this very quickly.
Go, go, go.
Case number 2022-5562, Ron Winters, agent for James W. Siebert and Associates, requests approval for a survey and inventory of 2.202 acres at 945 Alto Street in the River and Trails Archaeological Review District. We have a staff report. Thank you, Carly. Anything to add or change?
No, Chair.
Is Mr. Winters in attendance? Please enable him to be seen, heard, and sworn in.
I'm here.
Okay, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ron Winters, 109 Calle Paula, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87505.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, is there anything in addition to what you have written that you need to add?
David, if it will help move things along, I'll hold my comments and let you guys go.
Thank you, Ron.
Approved.
Member Wants.
I just have a comment on page 28. Gretchen has a last name and then a professional document. You should include that.
Got it.
And also she is not with ARMS, she's with HPD.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, members in.
I have no comments except for it's really fascinating to find Edna Ferguson's name as part of this title chain, and I appreciate that title chain. No other questions.
Thank you. Member Pierce.
No, I don't believe I have anything.
The only thing I will offer, and you don't need to change anything, is that there just seems to be a gap in the ownership records between the May 14th, 2002 title transfer and the preceding 1971 title transfer. I'm not seeing how it moved from name to name to name, but
Okay.
be that as it may, thanks to Mr. Hilgendorf for providing this information.
That would be my comment. It was invaluable.
That was great. I move for approval as submitted.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We will move on to case number 2022-5569. Ron Winters, agent for Brian J. Nenninger, Orion West LLC, requests approval of a survey and inventory for 7.961 acres at 7261 Airport Road in the River and Trails Archaeological Review District. Thank you for the staff report, Carly. Anything to add or change?
Chair, no.
All right, Mr. Winters, anything you need to add in addition to what you've written?
No, I'll withhold my comments and let you make yours.
Member Pierce.
No, nothing.
Member
No
Wong.
findings and pretty disturbed, so nothing for me.
No comment.
Member Zen.
Nothing.
All right, the only thing I will offer is that by chance on the sheet in the Santa Fe River Hydrographic Survey, this area is noted as the quote, old dry farm, unquote. So that seems to be the use of the land in the ownership of possibly the first person mentioned in your title search.
Got it. Okay.
That map is always useful, even if it isn't irrigation.
And where is that again, David?
The Hydrographic Survey,
Oh, right.
1978, it's the volume 2. There's detail maps and it happens to show this area.
Got it.
All right,
Okay.
we can entertain a motion.
Move for approval as submitted. Any seconds?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I second.
Moving in second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Are there any administrative matters and communications?
One hearing expected in August, Chair. So,
We
Thank you. Committee members, anything to raise? Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Nope.
No.
No matters
Move
from the
to
committee.
adjourn.
We can move to adjournment.
I did that.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Wands,
Aye.
Member Zinn.
Yes.
The
We are
motion,
adjourned. Thank
30 seconds to spare.
thank you, guys.
Run.
Planning commission, so thank you.
Good
Thank
evening,
you.
all.